On this episode of Behind the Mic with Nick Morgasen, we sit down with record holder for most ESPN Sportscenter broadcasts, Linda Cohn, and I got to speak to her about her career. She's been at ESPN for 23 years. She holds a very impressive record for 5,000 career broadcasts, and we got to talk about her career. She wrote a great book which describes a woman growing up in a man's world, and we got to talk about that. And she also gives great advice for people who are trying to get into the sports broadcasting industry. Now, let's go behind the mic with Linda Cohn.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be talking to this next person. This woman has had a remarkable career working at ESPN for 23 years as one of the first full-time female sports anchors. She now has the distinction of hosting the most SportsCenter broadcasts at 5,000. In my opinion, she's one of the best female sportscasters on the air today. I want to welcome Linda Cohn. How are you doing today, Linda?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So, growing up, where did you get your love and passion for sports from?
Well, anyone who read my autobiography a few years ago when I wrote it, Cohn had a no-holds-barred account of breaking into the boys' club. I took a funny look at myself and my journey, but nothing was funny about my start, and definitely my dad started me on my love of sports. But, I detail a lot. I have a website, lindacohn.net, and in it, if you go to it, I'm holding a Elko Superfan contest, and I'm begging and asking fans just like me, because I'm a nutcase, I'm a fan, to share their story of why they're such a big fan. If it's a hockey fan, that's great. If it's an NBA fan, NFL fan, whatever it is, share it with me. Reason why is my dad, I tell many stories, which I posted some videos on, regarding that, I learned to curse from my dad, and usually the cursing came during watching either the Giants, the Rangers, the Knicks, or in his case, the Yankees. For me, it's the Mets. So, that's why I'm so passionate about being a sports fan. So I get it from my dad.
So what made you eventually decide that you wanted to become a sports broadcaster in the field?
It was no earth-shattering decision. Basically, I couldn't be a goalie in the NHL. I played hockey growing up. That's what I really wanted to be. Obviously, that didn't happen. So I knew I had to be a part of sports in some way. And I always tell people, especially young people, when I do speaking engagements, and say, listen, have a plan A, but also have a plan B, C, D, and E, and F. And that's what I had. I mean, my plan A was to get on TV to talk sports, but the journey took a while, even before I got to ESPN in 1992. I started out in news doing radio, then I went to sports in radio, then to get to do TV, I had to do local Long Island TV, but doing news, because no one gave me a shot at sports on TV, even at a very local level, like LI News Tonight and News 12 Long Island and all of these places. But that's okay. I didn't complain about it. I just kept, powering through. And then my big break was getting to Seattle, Washington, and CBS affiliate hiring me to do sports, reporting and broadcasting. So that was the choice I went with, Plan A, or Plan A plus, since I couldn't be an NHL goalie. But I figured that would be the closest way to, do what I want to do and do what I actually found out that I was pretty good at.
So you recorded an interview with Neil Best from Newsday saying, I never wanted to be like everybody else. Everybody is from somewhere else, right? I'm proud of where I'm from. I wanted to keep these roots. How did growing up on Long Island influence your style of sports broadcasting, and what did you do to make yourself different from everybody else?
Well, what's different, I didn't lose an accent. I had this accent. You can hear it loud and clear. I'm proud of it. People in my business tend to work really hard on losing their accent and losing where they're from. And then many of them say they become jaded about sports and that they don't root for their teams the way they used to. That hasn't changed with me. That's what makes me unique. That's what makes me different. That's why I connect with fans. That's why fans like me. And because I'm one of them, and that has never, ever changed. As for Long Island, it's such a passionate fan base and so many teams that I grew up that I could have rooted for, and I picked four big ones, which I've mentioned already. So, as opposed to growing up somewhere where perhaps maybe there was only a college team or no pro teams, or that's what was so great about Long Island. And, of course, I'm different than anybody else because even though I grew up on Long Island, I was not an Islander fan. I was a Ranger fan. Nothing more different than that.
So your first job was at Walk Radio in Patchogue. What experiences did you gain from this first job, and how did this open doors for you?
Well, first, it was the first thing I could put on my resume that wasn't an internship. And I always tell young people, you got to try to get, real-life experience and try to do, internships or anything that gets you out there and out of the college campus so you have some kind of practical experience and something to sell on your resume. So that was my first job of any kind. I was a newscaster because, like I said, there were, back in the day in the 80s, early 80s, there wasn't any females doing sports to my knowledge. But what was great about that experience, and I'm glad I had a tremendous news director who hired me. His name was Frank Brinka. And Frank really taught me how to write. I mean, I came out of college at Oswego State. It was the greatest college. I had so much fun, and I learned a lot. But my skills about writing for radio had to improve, and WALK and Frank Brinka's guidance helped me do so and really hone my skills, which got me ready to the next level. So I loved that experience at WALK. And it was great. It's a 50,000-watt FM station. And plus, everyone always said that when I would do my 5-minute newscast, when the sports part of it came on, you could tell a difference. I would just perk up, and it would be such a different in tone and dialogue and what was said and the knowledge that was put forth as opposed to news reading off the AP wire.
We talked about your Long Island accent, and you went to SUNY Oswego. You had one of your professors help you try to, I guess, break the accent. Who was that person, and did the Long Island accent hinder you from chances of succeeding in the business in the beginning?
I'm not sure about if it hindered me or whatever. It didn't. I mean, because Fritz Mazer, great professor at Oswego State, told me, the simple thing to do to lose any accent, doesn't even have to be a Long Island accent, is just talk slower and open your mouth wider when you speak. And by doing so, you just kind of slow things down, become conscious of what you're saying, how you're saying it, thinking it through, and, you lose most of your accent. Some words I still had the accent, but that's okay. It's fine. It all worked out, looking back.
So talking to Linda Cohn of ESPN, would you say that one of the biggest factors in getting into the sports broadcasting field is being comfortable with yourself and not worrying about what other people think?
Yeah, I mean, that it takes time. I mean, it took a long time for me to do that and kind of put up a wall where I have to block out the noise and not worry about what other people think, because everything is subjective in our business. It's just, all it is people's opinions, or all it is people that may have preconceived conclusions in their head about what a person is just by looking at them, or their name, or where they're from, and they don't really give you an honest shake, look at you with a blank screen type of thing. So I had to block all that out and realize that wasn't important. What was important is knowing that I did well, that I'd never have to worry about, always giving myself a pat on the back, because I was my worst critic. I'm the one that always pushed to make myself better and ever, always. I never rest on my laurels. I never do to this day. When I approach Sportscenter number 5001 this Saturday morning at 8, I'm still going to approach it like people are watching me for the very first time.
So having a successful career like yours, when you hear the statistic 5,000 episodes of SportsCenter, what comes to your mind? That I'm proud of my loyalty to a company. Many others, and for one reason or another, probably mostly money, left ESPN, and many of them are back. Now, they're probably making more money than me, but I don't look back with any regrets. I'm glad I stayed because I raised a family. I raised two amazing children who were, of course, with me at the end of my 5,000th show. I was so surprised. It was so great. And when I look at them and how they've grown up and matured and not moving around and all this stuff just so I'm chasing what, some people say could be better than where I was. It's that old grass is always greener syndrome where many of us can get caught up in, where if we just step back and say, well, wait a minute, let's look big picture. So when I look at that 5,000 number, that's what I think about, that I raised two amazing children, that I didn't move them from place to place, network to network. And I also look back and see, because of that 5,000th milestone,
so many people that I did not realize that I touched have an impact on. And, of course, not only with the amazing, many of the young women who have come into this business, who've reached out to me through social media or text or email to tell me what I've meant to them, and the words they've done it, and everyone had a different message for me, or even not only women, men would reach out to me and say, I met you a few years ago, you were so nice to me, I'll never forget it. Just random people. And, of course, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, all athletes. It's been a surprise. So that is what I take from the 5,000, people that I've touched, people that have grown up with me, and what they say about me where I know they don't have to say it. And so that's eye-opening in an amazing way, and I'm just very grateful.
So on your website, I saw a great video created by your ESPN colleagues saluting you. How did it feel to receive all the appreciation and love from everybody you've worked with over the years?
Well, it says a lot. I mean, ask anyone, who has worked at a place, especially for a long period of time, where I loved, it was very touching to me. Like I said, I was very grateful for that, that they wanted to do that, and the things that they said. And the most important thing is that I'm glad I didn't change. I'm glad they always see me as down to earth and nice and helpful and grounded and real. Those are the kind of words that mean everything in your life, because you're not playing a part, you're not playing a role for somebody. You're just staying true to yourself.
So let's go back in the time machine to July 11th, 1992, when you hosted your first episode of Sportscenter, which was a 2 a.m. edition with Chris Myers. Can you take us back to that time period, and what was that moment like for you being under the bright lights for the first time?
I mean, I wouldn't be human if I didn't say I was nervous. I was nervous, but the two things I wanted to get out there was, one, I didn't want to make a mistake, obviously, and two, I wanted people to know how much not only I knew about sports, but how much I love sports just like them. I think that was very significant. Many people were seeing sports given by a woman for the very first time back then in July 11th, 1992. So I also felt like I was carrying, a torch for a lot of women, even at that time, even way back when, where it wasn't just about me, it was about others as well.
So what was it like being one of the few women sportscasters earlier on in your career, and how has women in sports broadcasting evolved from then to now?
Looking back, I mean, it was cool, it was wonderful, but I like I said, after I did the first one, I was concerned about the second one. You always had to have your A game. Being a woman in a man's world back then, and even now, you have to have your A game. You don't have any windows of opportunity to mess up. You just don't. You really don't. And you have to always remember that. The other thing, how things have changed now, I mean, the biggest change, of course, is, technology with what we see in ESPN, just that network alone, and how things have changed for the better regarding how we as sports fans get our sports.
So we've seen SportsCenter and ESPN evolve, like you were just saying, with the technology over many decades. What do you attribute your longevity to staying at ESPN for as long as you have?
I mean, that's easy. The reason why is simple. It comes out on the screen. It bursts out on the screen. That's what people tell me. My love and passion for sports, where as I mentioned earlier, I treat every show like someone's watching me for the very first time. I don't take anything for granted, and I make sure I enjoy every moment. And I think that's the key to anything that you're doing in life, because when it goes away, who knows how that'll affect you. And, and I just make sure I have a lot more laughs and smiles than I have, that I sweat, and which I don't, because I'm only talking about sports, but then just have problems or concerns about the way a show goes. I take a show very seriously. I take what I do very seriously, but I also know how to have fun as well.
So growing up on Long Island and being an avid Mets and Rangers fan, how hard was it to make a transition from reporting on local teams to reporting national stories and highlights on SportsCenter?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you just sort of had I never really was really a homer on the air. I went out of my way not to be a homer on the air in the old days, because that was poo-pooed on. And when I mean homer, I just mean letting people know that I grew up a fan of a particular team. I would never wave the pom-poms back then, but now it's changed where you can talk about which teams you grew up with and have opinions on, your teams and what they should do. And I think that's great because that's what people can relate to, and that's what they can connect to.
So you've had the chance to work with many different co-hosts on SportsCenter. Who are some of your favorite colleagues you've co-hosted SportsCenter with over the years?
I mean, it's hard to single them out. There's so many of them, and they've all been amazing in certain ways at certain times. But the key for a successful SportsCenter is always, to me, chemistry with that co-anchor, 9 times out of 10. And I usually have had that over the years with people like, Rich Eisen is always like top of the list. Back in the day before Rich, Tom Mees, who's no longer with us, Chris Myers, of course, and Carl Ravitch when he's primarily did SportsCenter. It goes on and on. John Butchergrass and I have definitely had some moments because we both love hockey. Those kind of people, just to name a few. But to me, you can always, if your co-anchor is willing to have the mindset that it's a team operation and to have chemistry, then the show will be a success, and then both will leave the set happy. So that's usually the key to having a fun show and a partner that's good to work with. So
just to see where your career's going, do you see yourself hosting, and I don't know how possible this is, but another 5,000 episodes of SportsCenter?
No, but I don't see myself leaving the business anytime soon. But another 5,000 SportsCenters, I don't think so. There's so much more I need to do.
Do you see anybody else eclipsing your record of 5,000 episodes of SportsCenter?
You know what? I don't know. I didn't see the rankings, but if they do, that's great. I'd hand over the torch to them, and I'd have no problem doing it. I'll just know that I was the first.
I mean, I found it quite interesting because I was reading in one of the articles that you were quoted in that you didn't even know that ESPN Stats and Info kept track of amount of episodes co-hosted, right?
That's correct. I didn't even know. I just go about my business, doing the show, doing my job, loving what I do, expanding my brand, and doing speaking engagements and working on LindaCohn.net and having fun Elko Superfan contests and being very active on social media at Linda Cohn. So when someone said that to me, I was like, wow. But then I realized, hey, I guess you're right, because I've been here 23 and a half years, and I primarily have hosted SportsCenter.
So do you want to quickly tell people where they can get active with this contest so they can find it online?
Oh, yeah, thanks. It's just go to LindaCohn.net, and you can see it. The contest run to March 10th, and we got some good prizes. But the most important thing out of that is that everyone has a story about being a fan and how did they get to be a fan. It's one of the most asked questions I'm asked. So I'd like to hear from the average fan, about that. So just go to LindaCohn.net, and it'll all be there for you.
Linda, this was an absolute thrill. I've watched you on SportsCenter for a while. You're one of my favorite anchors on SportsCenter, and I just enjoy watching you do SportsCenter.
Well, thanks so much. And you can find me now 8 a.m. Eastern on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and I do appreciate those kind words. And thanks for having me.